This is the last episode recorded in Vienna in October 2023. Welcome everyone. Our guest is again Nicqi Ashwood, a reverend of the United Church in Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, a teacher, mission partner, and gender equity advocate. She graduated at the Bossey Ecumenical Institute and Eden Theological Seminary in the USA. She is actively working against domestic and gender-based violence, sexual abuse, and human trafficking. She passionately fights for equal rights and the respect for human rights. Nicqi has been member of several organizations and is currently working for the World Council of Churches that deal with these very serious issues worldwide. We would like to inform you that you are about to listen to some emotionally challenging and potentially disturbing stories. If you feel the need, please take a break and mind yourself. May we all learn from it and be part of the solution to these disturbing phenomena. Hello everyone, and welcome to our podcast with Nicqi Ashwood. Hi Nicqi, thank you for taking the time and joining us.
Hello, I'm Reverend Nicqi Ashwood, Program Executive for the Just Community of Women and Men at the World Council of Churches. Thank you for joining us. And as you listen today, you will hear me sharing about my engagement with issues related to sexual and gender-based violence, SGBV, that led to me being part of the World Council of Churches program and to me being the custodian of the Thursdays in Black campaign for a world without rape and violence. Welcome, and I hope you will learn something from us today.
Thank you very much, Nicqi. If you would like to share another story with us, please go ahead.
And this was a story of a young lady whom we met who was staying at the secure house in this island. And while we were visiting with them, we were offered the opportunity to hear the stories of each resident. So I remember there was this one lady who looked as though she had Down syndrome. And you will recall that Down syndrome persons have a very oval, moon-looking face, more round than oval. And their gaze doesn't always seem to be fully focused. I noticed her and I thought, Down syndrome person recovering from substance abuse. Interesting. But then, since everyone had been a victim of sexual and gender-based violence, I said, maybe she was a victim of rape or something along those lines. She also had her hands in her pockets, and I thought, okay, she looks a little bit calm and unbothered by the rest of us. When the stories started being sharing, she was invited to share her story. And it was at that point that I noticed that her face was not necessarily round because of the extra chromosome that Down syndrome people have, but rather her face had been split almost all the way from forehead across the chin. And in piecing the face back together, it seemed that her face had been broadened as the doctors did the necessary surgery to restore her face to wholeness. And within the context of her story, she explained that she had been with this partner for however long, and things had deteriorated to the point where there was a restraining order, but they had children. So the partner was expected to provide financial support to meet the needs of the children. Not surprising. One day, the eldest child was sent, the eldest of the four, was sent to go to the father to get the monies to come back because the father was not supposed to be within X meters of the home. When the child came back and knocked, the father said, "Let me in." The mother had to decide, do I let him in and run the risk of myself being hurt again? Except that the son shouted, "Mom, don't let him in because he is armed. He has a machete." And a machete, for those of you who don't know, is a long knife used to chop cane or bush or whatever in the fields. The father then said, "If you don't let me in, I'm going to kill him," meaning the son. Torn between 3 children, herself, and 1 child, she needed to decide, do I allow him to kill the son as he has threatened and still possibly kick the door down and come at me? Or do I offer myself for the sake of my children? She opened the door and he started chopping as though he was chopping in a field. When she next was conscious enough to recognize what was happening, she is swathed in bandage. She's in the hospital and she discovers that she has lost a child. She never stated which of the 4. And she had been chopped to the point of being hospitalized for 3 months as they sought to do reconstructive surgery. The children that remained were in state custody. And of course, she was now being placed on heavy painkillers and sedative drugs, which in many instances are addictive. But as she spoke, I realized that the hands that were in the pocket were moving. But it dawned on me that her hands were not in her pocket, but rather all 4 digits on each hand had been removed and only the thumb remained. In addition, she explained that she had a spider web of bruises on her back from the various chops she had received. And she took her shoe off, and we noted that a piece of her heel had been cut, completely severed from the rest of her foot in all that ensued. She was therefore in constant pain. Pain for the loss of her son, pain for a relationship that had gone extremely south, and pain for the physical damage that had been done to her body. The medical team felt that she was becoming addicted and did not need to be given pain relief after some time. So she was discharged. In trying to cope with the pain of loss, emotional, physical, mental, and social, she turned to addictive drugs and found herself in multiple cases being arrested and then sent to this home for addiction. It is in that state that she was found, and the persons who managed the home kept her on so that she would be able to be a contributing part of society. She does not seem to have had ongoing contact with her children. But I remember when that happened, the men in the group just were bawling. They were bawling for her. They were bawling for the young lady whose story was including drug abuse, trafficking, among other things. And these men were all saying, "We are sorry. It's not your fault. We're sorry that this happened to you." And I think those were some of the reasons that I felt that I needed to be even more intentionally involved in changing the narrative and helping women to identify the exit door.
What insights were you able to gather more recently, especially through your participation in the workshop about domestic and gender-based violence at the EPIL conference in Vienna?
Recently, at a gathering for the Ecumenical Forum for European Christian Women and the European Project for Interreligious Learning, I was in a group and we were speaking about issues surrounding domestic violence and how women relate and what we would do if someone we knew was a victim of domestic violence. How would we respond in that moment, whether to remove them from victimhood or help them to the space of survival? And I remember sharing about someone I knew who actually was as close as family and was in a relationship with a man who was extremely abusive. Part of the reason he had become abusive was that he had been socialized to think a man is really a man when he is physically abusive. And I remember in more than one situation saying to this lady, I love you. I see you as my family. Leave this guy. She never ever felt as though I was looking out for her interest. She always felt that I didn't want her to succeed in this relationship because I was closer relationship wise with the man than with her. Except that things came to a head one day. And again, it was a machete incident. Now, this couple had fought to the point where police were often involved. They would have a fight in the night when he would come in drunk, and she would run from where she lived to the safe haven of my mom's home, and my mom would intervene and try to separate the two of them. Police would be invited, they would arrest him. She would go back sometimes right there when he's being arrested or the next morning and say, no, I love him, you can't arrest him. And I would go through the regular routine. Leave the man. When are you gonna die? Leave the man. And one night they fought and he slapped her with a machete to the point where her face was swollen. This time she did not run to our house. This time she didn't stop by the police station. The fight continued the next morning, except that this time she was making porridge. I don't know if it was intentional, I don't know if it was accidental, but this time when he raised his hand at her, the pot of porridge ended up in his face, down his chest, and literally the top layer of skin came off in minutes. He had to be hospitalized. Suddenly, his male family members, who saw nothing wrong with her being beaten, decided that she needed to be arrested. She should be killed. She needed to be taught a lesson. She needed to be reprimanded. And I remember myself and my mom saying, isn't it interesting that you suddenly are able to see all the ways in which she is wrong for hurting this guy, but none of you saw that he was wrong for hurting her. And I said to the group that there are times when I feel that what I do in trying to curb sexual and gender-based violence is in honor of her and all the other women I know who I would have wanted to physically help out of their situations of distress and was not able to.
Thank you for sharing all of these stories with us. And it's not easy to talk after or to find the words after all these stories. Preventing is also part of healing trauma, to prevent the actual trauma to happen. And do you think you could take this program to schools, for example, or to start educating younger people about this issue?
To be very honest, thank you for that question. To be very honest, some of that has started, because the joy of Thursdays in Black is that it is not restricted to any particular formula for everyone. It's not a one-size-fits-all. So I remember my former boss, Professor Isabel Apao-Piri from Malawi, going home on holidays, and she was wearing her pin on a Thursday, and she was at this fairly remote restaurant. And the person serving her said, "What's that all about? A world without rape and violence?" She explained to him, and he says, "When I'm not working here during the holidays, I'm a school teacher. And he actually started a program with the one pin she had on her with primary, which would be elementary school children, to teach them about good touch, bad touch, good words, bad words. So as simple as that, talking about respecting themselves. And one would say, why does respecting myself become part of the conversation? But part of what we said was, if I respect myself, I respect others. And if I respect others, I won't do to them what I do not want to have done to me, which includes not using the hands to hit, not violating the other person's person and space. And we did some of that. In West Africa, I wanted to make sure I got the space right, particularly in Togo, my former colleague, Ayoko Bahon Wilson, worked with two French volunteers, trainers, to prepare a packet called Parce que Dieu m'aime, which means because God loves me. And it's a 16-session curriculum for helping Francophone elementary-ish up to about 8th, 9th grade students think through, if God loves me, I can, I am, I will, I. And it takes them through different sessions. To think about how to treat people, how to respect the other, how to respect self, but also to say that if God is my friend, then these are the kind of things that friendship looks like. And therefore, these are the things that are not good friendships. And this has been used in Togo, in Burkina Faso, and I think also in Cote d'Ivoire. I know that there were requests for some of those in DRC. So that has been another way of processing Thursdays in Black.
Are there more ways than the ones you mentioned so far?
We have worked with women who work with refugee camps, not so much me, because my role is more of just trying to keep track of all that is happening. Part of the Thursdays in Black has been taken to Bible studies that is on the World Council of Churches website. And we have about 8 Bible studies for Thursdays in Black, looking at some of the very hard biblical passages, not just the rape of Tamar, but other passages that help us to address the issues and invite people to say, just because it's in the Bible, it doesn't always mean that it's something that is worth emulating. So we look, for example, at the rape of Bathsheba, and many people don't see what happened between David and Bathsheba as rape. But we argue that if David is king and Bathsheba is the wife of one of his soldiers, when David sends for her, it cannot be her fault. And therefore what David did was rape. And we unpacked that to say, how then do we go forward? And different people have offered presentations in different ways. We've done violence training, anti-violence training. And the case that is near and dear to my heart as it relates to young people is the work that was done in Kenya for the East Africa Ecumenical HIV and AIDS Initiative and Advocacy through Reverend Dr. Pauline Njiru and one of her mentees, proteges, Brian Muyunga. And they established an after-school extracurricular club based on the ethos of Thursdays in Black called Love Matters. And what Love Matters did was play on the concept of matters about love, and love is important matters. So it's Love Matters. And they met for 2 years just talking about relationships What does it mean to be in a relationship as a college student? What does it mean to be in a positive, life-enhancing relationship? What looks like a negative relationship? And they talk about everything, including sex and sexual relationships. What they also did in the program was establish mentors who would therefore journey with the young people along the way, as well as another set of mentors like myself who were not in East Africa but would provide some of the training on different issues as invited. And that proved to be helpful for many of them, to the extent that some of them have gone on to do other programs in their own spaces, worship sessions, Bible studies, after school conversations, special Thursdays in Black features during, for example, the 16 days of activism to end rape and violence, which will begin on November 25 through to December 10. And so there are various ways to approach it. I know of one lady who she took it on as a way to end hate crimes in her context by raising awareness of hate crimes against the LGBTQ population. Another person I know thought that we need to end period poverty and use Thursdays in Black to address issues of access to sanitary health care for people who are menstruating, because her thought was, if you have access to menstrual hygiene products, you won't feel the need to do whatever it takes to get access to the products. So there are different routes. During COVID lockdown, we also were sharing information about hotline and the different codes that were used at the time to help people who were in distress. So very different, but hopefully impacting in different ways.
Is there a way for listeners to avail of support if needed or receive more information?
If you are listening to this podcast, or if it has been shared with you, and you need to speak with us, may I invite you to visit the World Council of Churches website at www.oikumene.org. www.oikumene.org. Once you have contacted our communication staff, they will get in touch with us. And if you wish to be part of our training, reach out to us as well, and we will see what we can do on your behalf. You may be under the age of 18. You may be over the age of 60. You may be between 18 and 59. And you are or know of someone who has been victimized by sexual and or gender-based violence, there is hope. Every country around the world that has ratified, that is, signed on to the Convention for the Elimination of all kinds of discrimination against women, have agreed that domestic violence, that sexual violence is not to be a part of the way of life for their people. In many instances, this means that safe houses exist. In many instances, this means that within the mosque, within the temple, within the church, there are folks who know of these laws and who are working to ensure that safe spaces are available. You might not know how to escape now, but I would encourage you, seek help, seek refuge, because every human being has the right to life in fullness, and that includes you. I pray safety for you, and I want to remind you, if you are being abused, male, female, or other, or child, abuse is not your fault. Someone right now has prayed for you that you will be safe. And it is my prayer as I pray this, that you will find the courage to escape and that you will find life in fullness. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicqi, for sharing that with us. And thanks to the audience for listening. If you're interested in what Nicqi does in more detail, please head to the website she mentioned before. Thank you again. Please take care of yourself and everyone around you.